Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. We begin our video with a story in which the CEO finds himself in a bad situation during a pandemic. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. The Office Queue. I work as a developer for an IT company. Though I still do a number of support tasks every now and then, due to the current global health crisis, we're asked to work from home as much as we can. There still is the option to work from the office, but with no more than one person being allowed per room, you have to request a day where you can come into the office. You're then placed in the office queue and assigned a date which you can come in. Our access cards are linked to this system, so we physically cannot come into the office outside of our assigned dates. Of course, some people, including our CEO, are there practically every day because they can't work from home. This is all fine and everyone understands, even though it makes the office queue longer. However, if you're able to work from home at all, you have to make use of this queue and are not allowed to deviate from that. One day, I get a call from the CEO. CEO: my computer stopped working. Me: have you tried X, Y, Z? We go through some basic on-the-phone troubleshooting steps, but to no avail. CEO: then please come into the office as soon as you can. I'm really stuck here. Thinking he'll sort out the access into the building, I get into my car and get to the office about 10 minutes later. However, at reception, my card doesn't allow me access. I speak to the receptionist and she informs me that I should make use of the office queue in order to get in, as the nature of my work doesn't require me to be in the office. I eventually end up calling my manager, the HR manager, and they all end up telling me the same thing. I even try ringing up the CEO to see if he can make an exception, but of course he doesn't answer his phone, so my only option is to go back home and submit a request into the office queue. My scheduled date is more than a week in the future. I shoot the CEO a quick email explaining that this is as soon as I possibly can get into the office. No further response. A week later, I get into the office, make my way to the CEO's workstation, and find him working on the tiniest laptop. He's furious that I couldn't come in sooner, but it turns out that he had no ability to override the office queue. Only the HR manager could do so, and they were now also in the queue in order to come in and override the queue for me. I do the troubleshooting that I can do on site and find that his computer doesn't boot indeed, but something starts smelling funny. I open the case to find something is short-circuited inside the PSU, and there's some smoke coming out. Immediately, I disconnect the power supply cable and grab a fire extinguisher. I end up not needing it, as it stopped smoldering as soon as I disconnected the power, fortunately. But the wide-eyed, silent response from the CEO tells me he didn't see this coming. I remove the faulty component from the case and search around if there's any local stores that carry a new compatible PSU. There are none. We order one online and it's set to arrive the next day. I immediately submit another request into the office queue, only to find that it's grown considerably since the previous week. My next scheduled date is 2 weeks out, between Christmas and the New Year. I relay this to the CEO, expecting him to go off on me for this. Instead, he just sighs. You know, at this point, I'm just glad you saved me from a fire. I'll ask the HR manager to put in a blanket override for you. The replacement PSU is in the office for about a week from now. HR is unwilling to make exceptions as I'm still able to do my work from home just fine in their opinion, so our CEO will have to work on his laptop until Christmas, and even though he's more than a little frustrated about it, fortunately he's not that frustrated with me. And our second story. Lady, we both know you're lying. I work at an internet cafe, which is basically legal computer gambling under the guise of buying internet time. You get to play slot machine-like games on a computer and are able to redeem the points for cash. So I recently got engaged to my wonderful SO. He gave me an absolutely gorgeous diamond ring that I love. Yay! On to the story. I opened the store, did my duties, and took care of the 10 people who'd come in. I began making coffee for myself, only to find that one of my coworkers had neglected to empty the coffee pot from the last time he used it. It was old, cold, and full of mold. Not really, just kind of gross. Yuck. I poured out the old coffee and tried to clean it out using some Clorox wipes. This coffee pot is weird. It's like a thermos, and the opening on top is really small, and it's hard to get your hand into. Luckily, I have tiny hands, but my ring and watch made it a pain to get my hand into. Plus, I didn't want nasty old coffee on them, So I took them off and placed them in a clean ashtray next to me so they wouldn't get knocked off or anything. Some lady, let's call her BFL for Big Effing Liar, comes up to the door of my counter about to get a soda. I took my hand out of the coffee pot and was about to reach for my rings and put them on when suddenly BFL starts going crazy. OMG, OMG, you found it! You found my ring! I'm so happy, I've been looking for it everywhere! She starts reaching towards it, and I slam my hand over the ashtray before she could get her thieving hands near it. Excuse me? My ring! That's my ring! I'm so happy someone found it! You have no idea, I've been looking everywhere for it! I just effing laughed. The nerve of this woman. I mean, I guess it takes some balls to claim something like that. What's so funny? I want my ring or I'll call the police. I put my ring on, and let me note this ring was bought from a private jeweler and a friend of the family in New York City, where my fiancé and I are from. We were 12 hours away from there, so this is not a case of similar-looking rings. This lady's just a thief. However, I decided to have some fun. In my sweetest tone, I say, "Do you have a picture of you with the ring? I can't just give it to you because you say it's yours." "Well, my phone is dead, so I can't show you, but that's my ring." She points at my hand. "What's the inscription on the inside say?" There's no inscription on my ring. "It says, forever on it." "Uh-huh." I stare at her, holding back laughter. "Well, now can I have it?" Now I'm just angry. "Lady, how GD dumb do you think I am? This is my ring, a ring my fiancé got for me. It came off my finger, and that's where it's staying." "Are you calling me a liar? You're just trying to steal my ring." "Lady, we both know you're a effing liar. Drop the effing charade, get out of my store. That or I'll call the police and they can decide whose ring it is and who's going down for attempted robbery." I have no idea if she could be charged. Theft by deception, maybe? I picked up the phone, and by the time I hit 9, she was out the door. She drove over the grassy median between my store and the freeway and sped off. She left $80 on her account, which I split between the customers, a bunch of nice older ladies, for having to listen to me curse and yell. She's also been permanently banned. Duh. And our last story. Aunt gets nothing. It's long, I'm sorry. This is more my grandfather's nuclear option than mine. My aunt on my father's side is the definition of a piece of work. She's always been a user of people and just plain only out for herself. Damn the consequences. My grandmother and grandfather, her adoptive parents, had their own list of issues like anyone, but we're good people. Salt of the earth type people. They always tried to do what was right and help however they could. This led them to bail her out of filing for bankruptcy on a couple of occasions because my aunt simply could not live within her means. Add on that, she had a history of just being a really crappy person, like stealing my grandfather's Social Security checks and retirement checks when it suited her. My grandmother died suddenly in 2001, and I remember my aunt being really childish that she didn't get anything, as my grandmother's will stated that everything goes to my grandfather unless he passed first. Like, basically every other married couple would do. My grandfather, shortly after, sold the house and land and moved about 3 hours' drive north in the state. I was 15 at the time, and the toxicity of her threw this really dark shadow over my whole family in my eyes. In my youth, I didn't realize at the time that he did that to get away from his daughter. I dropped contact with my grandfather, thinking that he abandoned me too. I regret that to this day. Refusing to interact with my aunt also meant that I fell out of contact with my cousin. Anyhow, a few years later, my grandfather reached out to myself and my cousin, asking us to come visit. We did, and it was a great time reconnecting. Aunt never knew about that, putting water under the bridge, so to speak. The years go by, and I still couldn't get over myself and once again fell out of contact a few times. About 6 years ago, my cousin calls me, saying that my grandfather is living with him now and that he has dementia and that he probably doesn't have long. I was out of state at the time, so I booked the very next flight I could and raced to see him. My grandfather was able to recognize me and called me by the nickname he always used for me. That was the last time I ever saw him alive. He died early in the morning a couple of days later, and my cousin and I had to go to the funeral home to set up the burial. Turns out that grandfather had set everything up already and had it paid in full several years prior. All we had to do was sign some papers. Because we weren't his most immediate family, they needed my aunt to sign off as well. So as much as I hated the idea, we set up a family meeting at the funeral home. We warned the director that she would try to change things, but not to let that happen. Not that she could pay the difference anyhow. True to form, during the meeting, she changed everything from the type of casket to the service to even wanting members of the military there for a 21-gun salute. Grandfather was a Navy man from 45 to 65 and never saw active combat. Grandfather was a simple guy and had chosen the cheapest of everything. The director took it all in stride and said that the difference was something like $16,000. He looked directly at her and said, "We take cashier's checks." The look on her face was priceless to me. After the service, about a week later, my cousin found my grandfather's will. So another family meeting, this time with grandfather's longtime lawyer friend. Grandfather left his house and land to be sold and the proceeds to be donated to charities after any debts owed from the estate are paid off. A little over $55,000 got donated across several charities in his name. He also left nearly all of his other belongings to my cousin to split with me as we saw fit, and left her $10 to be paid on the event of his death. Later, it was explained to me that he left her $10 so that she wouldn't have recourse to challenge the will. If you don't name a living immediate family member, they can challenge the will through some legal process. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.